there, I'm Eleni, and I'm going to talk to you about using the triads to increase or maintain high quality of work at work without CJB, criticism, judgment, and blame. In many contexts, people criticize, judge, and blame each other, which really puts people in a defensive mode, and then there's no way to think about the work because everybody's worried about self-preservation. So one thing you can do to increase your quality of life and work life is to figure out how to remove criticism and judgment and blame from your life without reducing any benefits that we used to think we get. Now, a lot of the pushback I get when I talk to people about criticism, judgment, and blame is they say, well, criticism and help people do good work. So if we criticize all the errors, people will get rid of the errors and there will be no errors, and then work will be better. If I judge something as good or bad, people will move toward the good and not the bad. If I blame them when they've not listened to my criticisms or judgments, they will change. And in fact, that hasn't worked. It might have worked in the past, but now we have an awareness that we want to work toward beautiful outcomes and contributions without being told how to do it and without being focusing on what doesn't work. So there's a new awareness that makes CJB a negative trait. So usually, this is the triad we have: thought, feeling, behavior. I have to point out the mistakes so that someone will find them, solve them, and everything will be okay. That's the thinking. I have to make sure everything gets done. So this could be a team leader, a VP, an entrepreneur, a team player, anyone. We all do this to each other because of the way we're socialized. So it's no blame for us, but we can also question this cultural and societal norm that we've been following for centuries. Now, how people feel when they think this way is they feel insecure and anxious, and they feel pressured to watch out for everyone's mistakes, which puts a negative spin on our psychology. Psychologists such as Sean Aker and other people in the positive psychology movement say when we focus on negative things, we really bring up our fears and anxieties. When we focus on what works, we bring in hope and wonder and curiosity. So how we think affects how we feel affects how we think. And of course, it results in a certain behavior and then outcomes, okay? So then, thinking about what doesn't work and pointing it out to everyone, and of course receiving everyone's pushback on that, either through, the way they respond directly or, indirectly with their facial expressions, can create these type of emotional experiences. Now, what would we do if we thought this way and felt this way? We would micromanage. We would watch everyone and we would look at the micro. Every step. Is every step okay? Okay, if it does, I feel safe. If not, I'm going to feel more anxious. It's also saying one person has full responsibility for the quality, or one person is fully responsible for the outcome. While in a hierarchical organization that is true on a job title, how we actually work and get things done doesn't need to be that way. So we can think about how we co-create instead of, one person is fully responsible for everything and it falls on their shoulders and nobody else does anything. So that's how some person may behave when they're thinking this way. And then, of course, criticize, judge, and blame people. Okay? So this triad is a very common one when people say, I need to criticize, judge, and blame to keep quality high, otherwise people will slip. Now, what is an assumption behind this is people don't care about their work. People are sloppy. People work only for money. And that is an assumption behind this triad. Now you could think about McGregor. He was a psychologist in the 50s, and he said theory X or theory Y. X is people don't really want to work, and when the boss leaves, they go and have a glass of wine. And theory Y is when we acknowledge that people really love to contribute and do their work, and they do that with pleasure, and so it really fills the basic needs that we talked about in other videos. So it really fills the need for for variety, for growth, for contribution, for feeling secure or certain within a context, for feeling important, like we matter, and feeling connected. So it's very, very primal to a human, to all of us, to contribute. And if we are not contributing, it's something either in the way we're thinking, our mindset, so the internal context, or the external context that prevents us. So if we're in a context that has a lot of CJB, what do? We are quiet, or we defend ourselves, or we want to prove we're right and they're wrong, right? So we're kind of combative. When there's no CJB, we'll see what happens. So this is a new triad. And this is basically a person saying, you know what, I want to feel more open, I want to feel calmer, I want to feel more curious and, notice what works. I've heard what the positive psychologists say about what you focus on magnifies, and if I focus on what doesn't work, that makes me feel anxious, and if I focus on what works, that makes me feel hopeful. And so what would we have to think and do to be open, more curious, more calm from this triad? So we could say, well, I focus on the quality instead of finding fault. So instead of saying micromanaging and saying, this was wrong, I could say, this worked well, this worked well. How can we replicate that? What did we do to make that work and we didn't do it here because this didn't work? And it's more on talking about quality instead of you specifically didn't do something, which puts people in a defensive mode, right? And it puts us in an uncomfortable mode to have to blame someone and then deal with their pushback and then have to defend it. And I mean, it's exhausting and it really doesn't work well. So if we say, okay, we love quality and we're going to start to define it, let's co-create a definition of quality that we each understand in a team, in a family, in any context, and that we have contributed in defining and that we understand. So we can make it, give examples to each other, help each other understand what is quality in the specific context we're talking about. And then we focus on that. We focus on how do we do that without finding fault? We measure what keeps the quality high. We measure that to help us know, oh, okay, things are going well. When we get this result, it's not going well. Let's shift and pivot quickly instead of wait until the end result. It's also questioning the context. So whenever we want to stop blaming someone, okay, what we could do is start questioning the context. So the assumption here is people love to do beautiful work. And if they're not doing it, something in the context internally, how I think, feel, and behave, or externally in how we communicate together, how the team is organized, how the organizational is organized, is preventing people from doing their best. That's a much more empowering and powerful way of thinking of things. Assuming everyone is very committed, and if they're behaving in ways that doesn't look like they're committed, we question the context. We ask them, what do you need to feel resourceful and do your best in today's context? And they'll say, well, I feel really worried. They might say, I feel really worried that I do something that's a little bit bold, but I think will work, like 90% think it will work, but 10% not sure, and I'm worried about the criticism. Nobody wants to be criticized, judged, and blamed. Most people avoid it like the plague. And when we avoid it, that means we're not doing other things we would have done if that doesn't exist, like share ideas, experiment, be curious, help each other without saying, well, that's your job, not my job. We would be much more open. So that's really the benefit of removing criticism, judge, and blame, because for someone who's doing it, it takes an enormous amount of effort. For someone who's receiving it, it's very unpleasant and it gets nowhere. So it's a great idea to stop doing it. And we have to understand what's behind it. It's a lot of millennia of culture behind it, and we need to question that. So this is the triad, one of the triads someone can use when really questioning our original triad and moving toward free CJB. So I encourage you to practice this. If you notice you're in a context that's critical, has judgment of what's good and bad, is blaming people, even themselves or others, wonder, what are people assuming? What are they thinking and feeling to be doing that? And what could they do if they focus only on the quality and make quality the center of it, okay? And then reduce all the other activity that comes with it from CJB, and just start saying, what is quality? How do we get there? How do we repeat it? How can we make it fun? How can we empower it? And let us know how it goes.